Hey there, everyone. This is Jeffrey with Killaskila Gaming, and welcome back to Little Nightmares. You can hear her humming. Previously, we completed the guest area. We are now in the final location of the Maw, which is known as the living quarters. And so we're going to press on and see what this has for us. There should only be one collectible left, which is the statue we saw on the camera that is in the ladies' room. So let's go and get that. This is really cool. So we need a key. We can see a lot of paintings, portraits, and whatnot. Some of them are covered. There's a lot of eyes. One of them, if you see kind of above me and off to the right of the eye, looks kind of like conjoined twins, so possibly a younger version of the chefs. And next to that, you can see what's most likely the lady at the center of a few people, or something like that. Oh, on the left side there, you can see another portrait. That's well, not a portrait, but that's the Maw. That's what we're on. Maybe those weren't people. Maybe they were mannequins. You can see her. Be careful. Statue's right next to her. Mirror's broken. Another covered photo. That. The vase stands out for a reason. This might seem like a bad idea, but push it. You might think that she would come for us, but she's not here anymore. Okay, this should be the last one for us. Rascal. Very nice. So I think all we have to do from here is finish the game. There is that trophy for getting chased, but we can get that another time if needed. We might get it with her, who knows. Smoke and mirrors. Let's go. It's cold. Oh, shoot. Ooh, that was creepy. And cool. The thing that makes this so much extra is all the mannequins in here. There's one mirror that happens to be intact. She's hungry again. This is badass. Okay, so that was the end of the living quarters. I think that was called. I have notes here that I'd like to go over as far as kind of discussing storyline and such, because I enjoy doing storyline lore, things like that. So, from the official website, the guests are described as full to bursting. The guests are an essential part of the Ma's life cycle. Herded into the large hall, they slump into their bowing stools, and there they feed, without taste, without need, without end, and then they leave one way or another. So you have the twin chefs in the kitchen that are cooking these massive meals, doing tons of dishes, and it looks like they're cooking mostly like steak from cattle and fish, and of course little human burritos that are or child burritos that are being sent by the janitor from the prison. And so the meat, I always kind of thought might be a bit misleading, because who has cattle that big? Who knows what else is out there in this world, but the meat's big. And so I know there's some thought that the meat probably comes from the guests after they die, because like it said in the description, full to bursting, and they leave one way or another. So I assume that most of the guests end up dying when they're there, or gradually die over time. And again, that goes back to why there would be luggage and shoes and stuff in the kind of depths of the maw, or the depths as far as we go, because there's actually further down that we'll see later. If you read the description of the lady, it says, a watchful eye, with graceful restraint, the lady casts the hypnotic spell that keeps the engine running. Amidst the chaos of the world outside, the maw is the only place that makes sense. And now this rumor of an escaped child threatens everything. Nothing can be allowed to interfere. The guests must eat, the maw must survive. So, it's kind of thought in some lines that the lady keeps the maw running and requires it to feed herself, or more specifically to feed her powers, because if you noticed, she was able to hover when she was chasing us. If she catches you, she actually kind of does this lift thing with her hand and kind of picks you up into the air, essentially. And she's not done. We'll see more of her in the DLC, so she's a really important character in this story. And so, and we could see what Six could do after feeding on her, so, which we'll talk more about that later. So that's kind of a bit of background on those characters and kind of what was going on there. Now, the story of Six is the one that really intrigues me. The description says, awakening in a world she cannot recognize, Six must learn to trust someone else if she is to stand a chance of survival. She has already seen more than any normal child ever should, but then, Six is not a normal child. So, there's some stuff of this that probably is drawing a bit more from Little Nightmares 2, which, we'll, tune to Little Nightmares 2 if you want to learn more about that. But awakening in a world she cannot recognize implies that Six has some kind of amnesia, that she's an amnesiac of sorts, that she struggles to remember things or chooses not to remember them, maybe because they're too terrible to remember. So Six, she wakes up at the very beginning. She doesn't seem to really know where she is, how she got there, and if you kind of follow her personality, I pointed out the fact that some people have put it out there that maybe she doesn't care about other people that much, because she kind of leaves the children in the cages and she just kind of takes off and leaves them for themselves. Now the child that we're going to be playing as in the DLC is referred to as the runaway child, but of course there's several of them that are being held there. And if we're sticking kind of with Six for this moment, Six kind of started off, like I said, by eating normal things. She starts off by eating bread. She wants to eat meat out of that trap for whatever reason. Of course, I like meat too. But then she ends up going on to eat the rat, the gnome, and then the lady herself, despite the fact that there is food around her throughout the entire story. So, and in some cases, more like normal food than what you would expect. And I pointed it out here, but Six, they say she's not a normal child. Whenever she gets hunger, she has to eat. Whenever she eats, you'll see that the lights start to flicker, and from what we could see with the lady, it might suggest that there was some kind of ability to absorb the life force of other people, which would explain why she was able to kind of shred the guest to pieces without doing anything at the end. And there's also some question as to how did Six get there? So how did she get to the Maw? Was she drawn there? Was it her hunger that pulled her to this place? Because Six is a character that we learn a lot more about in Little Nightmares 2 in the prequel, and this is kind of the sequel to where that ends up. A common theme in this story has been, if you haven't guessed it, gluttony. We see these people just gorging themselves to death. We see a person who seems to be a bit more caught up in vanity than anything else, with the broken mirrors, the thin body, the mask hiding her face kind of thing. We'll learn more about the lady as we go, but you have these people that are just constantly feeding their addiction, whether it's food or beauty or what else you might want to look at in this case. And of course, their whole plans are thwarted by none other than Six. So why call the game Little Nightmares? Six is the little nightmare in this case. She is our little nightmare in this story. Now, the Maw is kind of an interesting thing in of itself. Six was supposedly brought to the Maw by someone known as the Ferryman. If you go back to the nursery rhyme, it said, the lyrics for it go, "Hello, hello, we're lonely. Help her, and we'll see. My way, and you'll see. A halo ascending him above our sea. Come fun, here comes Veronica. Come, he cut Veronica. Run, here comes Veronica. Sent on a ferry upon our sea." Those are some of the lines that have been kind of interpreted from the story. If you watch back on that commercial we saw in chapter 2, in which I said I will include that in the description if anybody's interested in seeing it. But the idea was that one of the ideas that I've heard out there, which makes a lot of sense to me, especially if you play Little Nightmares 2, it builds on this concept, is that the nursery rhyme is used to draw people to the Maw, and it's thought that maybe it's more specifically used because it's kind of a schoolyard kind of song. It's a nursery rhyme. Maybe it's specifically being used to draw children to the Maw, which would explain why Six ended up there at some point. So we know the janitor is keeping children in the prison, and that he's shipping them off to the twin chefs, and the twin chefs then presumably cook them and feed them to the guests. How, I don't know, but there's a lot of evidence pointing to that being kind of the trail of events that lead to the end of these children. Lastly, there's the relationship between Six and the lady. So Six seems to have some kind of shared memory with the lady about being brought to the Maw by the ferryman. That's the kind of ongoing thought that I've found on this. And if you go back to Six's dream, she dreams of the lady in the beginning, which is kind of the insinuation on that. And, so it makes you question what's their relationship to one another. Now, I've read the interviews, and sometimes they're very heavily misinterpreted from what I've read, but the developers highly implied that the lady and Six do not have a mother-daughter relationship, as many seemed to think or wanted to think at the time that this came out. They never specifically said that there was no relationship between them, though, which is what a lot of people say. They say there's no relationship between them. Well, that's not what they said. They said there's no mother-daughter relationship in the interviews. I went and read them myself. If I can find them, I will include them in the description. I don't remember if I have those on hand. And so one of the thoughts that I've seen come out there outside of that is that maybe the lady can sense Six, and she can see Six, and she sees Six as this little nightmare or something on that line, because she knows that she has the power to destroy her or supersede her and take her position. Because what if the lady and Six don't have a mother and daughter relationship? What if they are the same person? Food for thought. And think about that a little bit more when you get into Little Nightmares 2. They don't have a mother-daughter relationship, but maybe they are the same person. Maybe that is their relationship. I love this music. So, anyways, that is where we are going to end off this series. the Little Nightmares, and we're not finished. There is DLC, as I've pointed out, and we will dive into that next. And I'm even considering going back to like the PlayStation 4 version of Little Nightmares 2, if anybody's interested in that, and kind of seeing where that plays into this. And of course, the reason I'm playing this is because Little Nightmares 3 is about to come out later this week. Is midnight, so technically it's tomorrow, but not tomorrow for me. So if I ignore the midnight factor, it is Tuesday for me. And Little Nightmares is supposed to come out. Little Nightmares 3 is supposed to come out on Friday. So I'm binging these as we move back to the new release, and I'm really excited to see what they're going to do. No idea if it's even going to tie into this, but I just like Little Nightmares, so here we are. Anyways, thank you all for joining, and I will see you all later.